Still some rain plaguing parts of the Northeast. We'll talk about that, where there could be some wet roadways and a rather dreary commute as we head on into your Friday morning. But let's start off with the tropics. And by the way, this Stormwatch is sponsored by Touchstone Energy. Here's a look at your tropical update in the Atlantic. And of course, we are on the downside of the season. In other words, we are starting to get into a time of the year where climatologically we see a little bit less and less action as we head through the month of October. Talk more about that in a moment. Right now, we still do have a tropical storm, which is way up here, a very strong tropical storm. It's very nearly classified as a hurricane. But what is happening is it's not this area spinning about. This is a big, strong, upper-level low-pressure area. And Lisa, which is the tropical storm, has got caught around this upper-level low and is being pulled almost due north now into the North Atlantic, and eventually that may actually get pulled off toward the northeast, or it may merge with this upper-level low and become one big superstorm out there in the middle of the Atlantic. Fortunately for us, that would be well away from any coastal areas, but it could generate some surf, believe it or not. Down to the southwest Caribbean, an area of disturbed weather, which doesn't look quite so disturbed tonight. And this area, which has kind of flared up a little bit again here, but running into some upper-level westerly winds, I would think, would preclude any kind of immediate development. Tropical Storm Lisa, as of the 11 p.m. advisory, 34.7 north and 37.4 west, centering the tropical storm 580 miles west-southwest to the Azores. Winds 70 miles an hour, so it's almost a hurricane here, moving north at, wow, 46 miles an hour. That is rocketing. So indeed, more of a problem for some shipping concerns here, and that would be about it. We do actually have a satellite, and it's almost getting out of the satellite perspective here. We're kind of looking at an angle down from the satellite, which is more centered over the U.S., and it's looking out into the Atlantic here. But here's that upper level low spinning about, and here's the hurricane, tropical storm, getting sucked up to the north rather rapidly. So again, no threat to any land area, and in the next 24 hours may become extratropical or lose its tropical characteristics. Old frontal boundary kind of stalled out down here into the Caribbean and on into the Gulf of Mexico. Nothing forming along that, but again, this time of the year you have to watch the tail end of these frontal boundaries. Sometimes a little area of low pressure can kind of get spun up along the end of that, but we're not seeing that at the present time here. Another area we're watching is the Western Caribbean. However, things don't look very organized here at the present time. This area south-southeast of the Gulf of Tehuantepec may bear watching over the next day or two in the East Pacific. And climatologically, again, the first 10 days of October, a lot of action clustered there in the Western Caribbean. That is a highly favored area. And I wanted to take a quick look at that tropical wave, again, at a fairly low latitude, moving westbound, a little bit of a flare-up. It had kind of fallen apart earlier, but we're getting a bit of a flare-up now. But again, it's going to be running into some westerly winds, west-southwesterly winds, which may cause a lot of wind shear on that system. So again, not looking for any signs of any development. All right, what have we had so far this year? 12 named storms. 7 of those have become hurricanes, and 2 of those, Bonnie and George, have gone on to become major hurricanes. An average season, 9, 6, and 2. So we are slightly above average for this hurricane season. And 6 of these systems have made landfall in the U.S. 3 of them, I believe, as hurricanes. That would be George, Bonnie, and Earl were all hurricanes as they came on into the U.S. So a rather active season. Way out here into the Indian Ocean, this is Zelia, believe it or not. This is a strong tropical storm. Upper level winds are blowing some of that moisture into Australia, but it's very, very rare to get a tropical system right there this time of the year. It would be like having a strong tropical storm in the Atlantic in April. Very, very unusual. All right, let's head back to the lower 48 and talk about some of the nasty weather. And there's not a lot of it out here, folks. Mainly in the northeast where our front has kind of stalled out. That's where most of the heavier rain has been. We have a new system moving into the Pacific Northwest, and believe it or not, there might actually be some mountain snows in the Cascades. You can see all the rain that has fallen, and there's still some rain here to be sure. Still some heavier downpours up along I-40 north of Wilmington. Some thunderstorms east of I-95, northeast of Wilson, and southeast of Richmond. And then into the northeast, this rain continues for eastern New England. Could be kind of a washout for your morning commute around Boston. We'll keep you updated on the rain. Stay with us.
It's windshield wipers and umbrellas as slow-moving rain soaks the eastern seaboard. Find out if tomorrow will be wet or dry. Watch Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by Touchstone Energy. We are America's electric cooperatives.
Partnership means growth. That's the way it's been for America's electric co-ops and America's businesses and communities. We've always kept affordable power flowing steadily and reliably. Now, we're joining other local co-ops to form a nationwide alliance, Touchstone Energy, to ensure state-of-the-art technology and personalized service. It's the power of human connections.
On the Stormwatch, a pretty quiet weather day around much of the USA. A couple of sprinkles in the northwest and the northeast. And in the tropics, the quiet day there too. But we'll tell you what's happening in the tropics on the tropical update and look at what's happening this time of the year. We are at the trailing end of hurricane season. Her origins and principal storms in October, generally into the central Atlantic and into the eastern portion of the Atlantic and into the Caribbean, where we see storms moving from the Atlantic into the Caribbean or into the Gulf of Mexico, either moving towards the south or towards the north into the Gulf at this time of the year. And tropical storms or hurricanes, the points of origin in between October 1st and in the 10th, generally into the middle Atlantic and in towards the southwestern Caribbean and southern portion of the Gulf of Mexico. Looking at what happens generally during the hurricane season, what's happened over the last 100 years, we generally see hurricane season peak in the early weeks of September, then a drop-off throughout the rest of September and a drop-off into October, with a second peak in the season right about the middle of October. We're about reaching that point, and then we do see a significant drop-off in the development of hurricanes in October and often in November in the end of hurricane season. Looking at what is out into the Atlantic and into the Gulf, we do still have Tropical Storm Lisa, which is moving well towards the north into the Atlantic and not a threat to landmass. We're seeing cloud cover along the eastern seaboard from our frontal boundary tracking into the Atlantic Ocean, and a few clouds and showers from that front into portions of the Gulf of Mexico. Here is a Tropical Storm Lisa, and here's where it is located at 39.0 north, 38.0 west, or 360 miles west of the Azores Islands. Winds at 70 miles per hour, moving towards the north at 43, and the pressure at 994 millibars. And looking at the infrared shot of Lisa, you can see what is happening, and the convection not as strong as the storm, still has some punch to it, but not a whole lot of rainfall from the storm as it moves slowly towards the north and towards the east, further out into the cooler waters of the northern Atlantic. Looking at the Gulf of Mexico, we still have unorganized convection here. We still could see a tropical depression come out of this, but still a lot of unorganized showers into Central America, into much of the Caribbean, into more so the Gulf of Mexico. We're seeing quiet conditions, some clouds and showers from our front that is into the Gulf and pushing into Florida and bringing some showers and thunderstorms into Florida and portions of the southeast. Taking a look at the central and southern portions of the Caribbean, another area of convection here that is still not of a major threat to anybody right now, but one always worth watching. And looking at the coast of Africa, we did have one area, a wave that came off and started to fall apart, but then coming back together in an area of showers over the eastern portion of the Atlantic. Here's a look at the hurricane season so far. We've had 12 named storms and 7 hurricanes and 2 major hurricanes. We're a little bit above average for the named storms and the number of hurricanes. The average is 9 named storms and 6 hurricanes, but we're right on average for the major hurricanes, and that is 2. And looking back into the Gulf and the eastern portion of the Pacific, lots of unorganized rainfall and convection here that still might become a depression, worth watching, but nothing significant right now. Just lots of rain in Central America, and activity taking place in the portions of Australia, where we've had a couple of cyclones that have brought rainfall in the portions of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, and things are quieting down here too. So it's a very quiet weather day, looking at the Caribbean and looking at what's happening into the waters off of the oceans around the country, and back on the mainland, another quiet weather day with showers that are mainly into the northeast. Into Australia, we're seeing cloud cover over the central portion of the continent, a little clearer in northern Australia, and with it being the seasons being opposite. Nice weather in Australia into the 70s there, and we're seeing the cloud cover and warmer temperatures into Indonesia and portions of India, where temperatures are where they should be, into the 90s, with showers and thunderstorms into the region. We're going to see a pretty quiet weather day continue around the United States. A few showers into the northeast that will happen over the northeast for today and tomorrow into Sunday into portions of northern Maine. With that, we will see a couple of showers around Portland and Boston, and eventually some more rainfall into the northwest. And there along our frontal boundary, we'll see the shower activity into the northeast and northwest, and a few showers here around Portland. Stay tuned for Weather Center.
Parts of the Northeast and New England will see a wet commute. Find out where and when the rain will fall and how long it will last ahead on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by Touchstone Energy. We are America's electric cooperatives.
Partnership means growth. That's the way it's been for America's electric co-ops and America's businesses and communities. We've always kept affordable power flowing steadily and reliably. Now, we're joining other local co-ops to form a nationwide alliance, Touchstone Energy, to ensure state-of-the-art technology and personalized service. It's the power of human connections. We are America's electric cooperatives.
Well, it's time for Stormwatch. A little bit later on, we'll talk about your national forecast as well. But first, we'll take a look at the tropics, where once again, another tropical storm has gained hurricane status. May not be lasting for that long, but we'll see exactly what's going to be happening with it. Let's go to John Hope, our hurricane specialist.
Well, thank you, Will. Good morning, everybody. Well, Lisa indeed is a hurricane now, even though it's way up here in the North Atlantic and racing away at about 44 miles an hour or so. Not going to affect any land. It's turning straight toward the north, but it's expected now by tomorrow not to be a tropical system any longer, and also to veer out to the northeast over the North Atlantic. Nearest land would be up here in Newfoundland, but it's going to pass well east of there. Now, elsewhere in the tropics, we continue to monitor the southwest Caribbean, where we have a bit of a concentration of showers. No sign of any organization there yet, though. And in the Bay of Campeche, along the southern end of that old front, we have a concentration of showers as well. And while we have this frame up, I wanted to show you on the Pacific side, south of the Gulf of Tehuantepec, we have a disturbance there that seems to be well on its way now to being a tropical depression, maybe later today or tomorrow. And then finally out here in the Atlantic, we have a strong low pressure system there that has flared up a little bit. We followed that all the way off Africa, and no sign of any organization for the last couple of days. Today it's a bit better organized. I'll focus on that a little bit later. And here you can see the Hurricane Lisa. That makes that the 8th one of the season now, by the way. It's moving toward the north at 44 miles an hour and top wind 75 miles an hour, centered 650 miles to the west-northwest west of the Azores Islands, which are way back here in the northeast Atlantic. So it's not about to affect any land. I don't think it's even going to affect the Azores as far as that goes. Now, looking at the early morning picture out there, the visible picture, we have a low in the upper atmosphere, which is down here, and then the hurricane itself is kind of rotating around that upper low, and that's one reason that it is moving so rapidly. Looking at the infrared picture, it's beginning to lose some of its tropical structure, I think. We don't see much of a concentration of clouds, heavy showers and thunderstorm clouds around the center. Now, turning our attention to the Gulf of Mexico, we mentioned we've had this front that extends from Appalachia Bay here all the way down into the Bay of Campeche. And right down here on the southern end of it, we do have a bit of a concentration of showers, but no sign of any organization. Now, in the Caribbean, showers are confined to the extreme southwestern portion of the Caribbean, and some of our forecasts indicate that the situation might change there in the next 3 or 4 days, and we have a chance to get a low develop in the Caribbean, the tropical low. But we certainly don't see any sign of it yet, so any development there is several days away. Now, this wave is way out here in the mid-Atlantic Ocean. It's flared up a little bit today as we have a high pressure in the upper atmosphere there. But on to the west, we have pretty strong westerly winds, so we don't think that this offers any kind of a threat really for the future, and nothing new coming off Africa that we need to be concerned about at all. Now, in the Bay of Campeche on the Pacific side, this system is getting better organized. We have some counterclockwise rotation there, so we're watching that. Maybe a depression by later on today. The hurricane season, as many of you know, I'm sure, peaked out on the 10th of September, but we wanted to point out this secondary peak we have in early October, which is right about now. Most of these developments are the ones that occur in the Caribbean, and that's why we're watching that area. Well, the average hurricane season, we have 9 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 2 major hurricanes, but now we have a little above average on both counts. We have 12 named storms, 8 hurricanes. Lisa makes the 8th one of the season. 2 major hurricanes. Those were Bonnie and George, a major hurricane being defined as one where the maximum sustained winds are above 110 miles an hour. Well, now let's go back to Will Annan and see if he has any stormy weather to talk to us about right here in the USA. Well?
Okay, John, once again, we'll check on what's going to be happening around the country, and here we go. We'll check on, first of all, our current weather map. And we'll talk about, once again, some high pressure, which is still in control now, all the way from lower Michigan down towards Texas. It's going to be a beautiful afternoon here. Looks like some of the worst of the weather this afternoon and right through tomorrow is going to be confined to central and northern New England thanks to this area low pressure. Looks like maybe a dribble or two of rainfall around New York City this afternoon, but the bulk of the rainfall, even bypassing Boston right now, is moving on northbound, hitting a good chunk of the state of Maine, where the rainfall could be locally heavy through tomorrow morning. Otherwise, you can see over the deep south, things look fine right now. Watch out for some afternoon showers and storms in central and southern Florida. Weather Center is next.
Expect a rainy day in parts of the Northeast, but for how long? We'll look at conditions there and nationwide just ahead on Weather Center after your local forecast.
Hi, Bob Vila here to show you a unique new Craftsman tool no home should be without. Craftsman hand...
It's a little dreary and rainy across parts of the Northeast, and in the Northwest we've got a similar situation. We'll talk more about that coming up in just a moment. First of all, we get our tropical update with hurricane expert Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thank you, Janetta, and welcome to the Tropical Update. Good news for the weekend. We don't have to worry about anything in the tropics along the U.S. coastline, but we have been worrying about a couple of things. Some thunderstorm activity here in the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of Tehuantepec over here. Also down here in the southwestern Caribbean as well, an area of disturbed weather, but that's a little bit down the line. And of course we have our hurricane up here flying up to the north very, very quickly. Let's get to the graphic there. Here's as of 5 p.m. 49 north, 39 west. That's 900 miles northwest of the Azores. Azores are over here, and it's flying up almost right off of our screen here. Winds are still 75 miles per hour, moving north at 48 miles per hour. This is the last advisory issued by the National Hurricane Center on this hurricane. That does not mean it's no longer going to be hurricane force winds associated with it, but it's become extratropical, and it will be treated as a storm with hurricane force winds in it as it moves northward. So that's the end of Lisa as we know it. But we can see it on the satellite image here, roaring very rapidly, almost 50 miles an hour to the north, and it'll continue on that track and then swing a little bit more toward the northeast toward Europe. Now we also have a subtropical low down here, rather vigorous system, but not of any consequence for tropical development, only for surf sweeping down over the Windward Islands there over the weekend. big surf there. Gulf of Mexico, we've had this frontal boundary out in through here. Most of this is high cloud, a few isolated showers in here. A little more active thunderstorm activity way down to the south here, but looking at the surface observations, just a very weak hint of a trough there, and no real threat of tropical development the next day or two there either. Upper level winds over it, you can see, are westerly or southwesterly, not favorable at all for tropical development. In the Gulf of Mexico, as we move down here into the Caribbean, we see this area of disturbed weather here, and this is probably the most interesting or the most important to watch over the weekend on a casual basis for you here on the Weather Channel. This area of disturbed weather in here associated with a weak low pressure system above the surface and near the surface, and it's just sitting here, brewing, sitting there with a lot of thunderstorm activity. We expect as the upper level westerlies retreat back to the northeast, this may slide north slowly. But that's down the road and into next week. We'll monitor it very carefully. Now keep in mind, the hurricane season, we have a secondary peak here. This peak is associated with the development right in that area there in the southwestern Caribbean, and then a rapid decline into the late November timeframe. So we're almost out of the picture now with any major development. We had one tropical low out here, tropical wave that is moving toward the west. It's now encountering these upper level westerlies here and some fairly stable air that has come down from the mid-latitudes, and it's really not showing much sign of development at all. It'll continue to creep toward the west at about 15 miles an hour, but will not develop at all over the weekend, so don't worry about that either. And farther off toward the African coast, virtually clear there with the Cape Verde Islands, almost clear other than a few little low clouds moving out of the north there. One area of interest in the eastern tropical Pacific, this is that trough that's extending into this disturbed area over here, and that area is associated with a weak disturbance there. It could spin up into a tropical depression and affect the Central America and southern Mexican coast over the next 2 days, but we'll have to wait and see there. Keep in mind here, Atlantic hurricane season so far this year, 12 named storms, 8 hurricanes, 2 majors. On average, we have 9, 6, and 2, so a little more active season than normal. Let's get back to Janetta and rain in the northeast now.
Yeah, let's talk about the culprit for the rain in the northeast, and that is this old frontal boundary, an area of low pressure just kind of sitting here and spinning, has a counterclockwise flow of wind around it, and so that pulls that moisture in off of the Atlantic and dumps it right back on top of you. So we've had a very dreary day for you, and it looks like we're going to see more of that tomorrow. Also in the northwest, we have rain and snow. We're going to talk more about that coming up next. Stay with us.
It's a wet start to the weekend for folks in New England, but the picture is brighter in other areas. Find out what's in store for your weekend. Watch Weather Center after your local forecast.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Deardorff. Where would you go for a home equity loan? Let's ask.
Well, banks have the best rates.
But banks only lend money when you don't need it.
Advanta National Bank is different. They lend money to people.
Going to affect anybody. It's moving to the northwest at about 6 miles per hour, and we can see it out here.
And let's check out Stormwatch, sponsored by Touchtone, and we want to get you updated certainly on the tropics, and then we'll come back at home and give you the latest on severe weather threats overnight. Outside of South Florida, there is not a lot happening, which is typical of October. First, though, the tropics, and unusual situation. We're starting off in the Pacific, and we're talking about the Western Pacific, not the Eastern Pacific, because we have a major typhoon. This is Super Typhoon Zeb, and we've seen the pressure fall like a rock. The bottom was falling out of this thing over the past 6 to 10 hours, and now the winds are sustained at 100.